Good evening and welcome to the special committee meeting of council for Tuesday, October 28th, 2025. Tonight's meeting, we have one item on committee, and that is with Infrastructure and Operations Committee, and I'm going to turn it over to Chair Lana Mitchell. Chair.
Thank you, Your Worship. Infrastructure and Operations has one matter on the agenda this evening, being the Algonquin Avenue Road Safety Strategy Review. Do any members of council wish to declare a conflict at this time?
I would like to declare a conflict because I reside on Algonquin Avenue.
Because, pardon?
I reside on Algonquin Avenue.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Any other members of council? Seeing none, we'll continue. And thank you, Sarah, your conflict has been noted. I will now read the draft recommendation that the Algonquin Avenue traffic study remain on committee. In 2018, a report to council about Algonquin Avenue was presented to this committee following concerns about safety along Algonquin Avenue. Since then, two issues identified in the report have been addressed. Two issues are still outstanding today. Following the completion of the road safety strategy last year, city staff engaged road safety specialist SEMA to conduct a safety review of Algonquin Avenue to address the outstanding issues and identify any additional safety issues in this corridor. Representatives from SEMA are here tonight to present their findings from the review and their recommended improvements for the area. This evening we have Sarush and Giovanni from SEMA making a presentation to committee. I would ask that you take notes, make note of any of your questions during the presentation, and then we will have a period that questions will be allowed following the presentation. I would now ask that Sarush and Giovanni and Megan come forward and welcome you to our beautiful municipality and look forward to your presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. Today we're going to talk about the findings from the safety review that we did for Algonquin Avenue.
Sorry. Is that off?
No, it's working, yep.
That's on?
Yep.
Sorry.
Can you pass to the next slide? So if you recall, last year, in the past two years, city was developing its first road safety strategy following the road Vision Zero philosophy. Vision Zero has some basic principles. I'm gonna go through them because they're relevant to our discussion today. First of all, no loss of life or serious injury as the result of traffic collisions is acceptable. Also, safety initiatives should be implemented objectively and regularly, considering the needs of all road users, including pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists, and cars. The other principle is that the safety is a shared responsibility, so everyone is responsible to put their fair share in order to make sure that we have a safe network. Finally, safety planning and design should be data-driven and factual, should be based off the principles of engineering, detailed, careful reviews, and backed up by data. The road safety strategy for North Bay has been developed considering all these principles, and the council approved it last year in November. Here I'm going to walk you through some of the guiding principles that we have developed through the road safety strategy that again is relevant to our conversation today. The vision that we set for the road safety strategy is zero fatal and serious injury collisions on our roads. This is an ultimate goal, long-term goal for the road safety strategy. And a short-term goal is set to reduce fatal and serious injury collisions by 15% within 5 years, by year 2028. The emphasis areas that we identified based off the collision data, as well as the stakeholders' input and public input, was to focus the city's investment on intersection improvements, improving distracted driving, aggressive driving, pedestrians, cyclists, and school zones. Based off these selected emphasis areas, we developed an action plan including more than 70 safety initiatives under 4 E's of safety, which are engineering, enforcement, education, and engagement. These initiatives, from the beginning of the implementation, starts with some background road safety management initiatives, like conducting in-service road safety reviews, or what we call engineering road safety reviews. At locations that, based off the collision history, are shown to be problematic, are shown to be hotspots. Based off this, as one of the first actions, the city looked at the collision data and identified one of the collision hotspots, which is on Algonquin Avenue between Highway 1117 junction to Norwood Avenue. This section has shown to have experienced a lot of collisions, even severe and fatal collisions. So, as I mentioned, we started to get engaged in conducting the road safety review. And the main issue was having a lot of pedestrian safety, pedestrian collisions, because the pedestrian safety was jeopardized by a lot of crossings that are happening here along the Algonquin Avenue, and a lot of conflicts that exist there with the traffic, with the vehicular traffic. So in order to give you a preview of what an in-service road safety review entails, here you can see that the process starts with some office work. We start with reviewing the collisions, reviewing the geometric features, conducting operational analysis at intersections, and looking at the safety from human factors perspective. After that, we oftentimes go to the field, conduct a field investigation in order to connect some of the observations with the findings that we had from the office review in order to identify deficiencies at the site and find best solutions to improve those deficiencies, which we call countermeasures. The process after that is going to be a set of recommended countermeasures that today we're going to talk about. And after the approval, it's going to go through a design and implementation phase. And later on, city can do monitoring in order to see the effectiveness of the implemented countermeasures. At this point, I would like to hand over the presentation to my colleague, Giovanni Bottesini, who has done the engineering review and can walk you through some of the findings and the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Soroush. Good evening, everyone. So now we're going to go into the engineering study itself, the main findings and recommendations. Right. So just to provide some context on the corridor, across Algonquin Avenue, we have a number of pedestrian desire lines, meaning there are businesses, a medical center, restaurants, retail, that on both sides of the streets that generate that desire for pedestrians to cross the road. And not only that, but they have to make that crossing over 4 lanes of traffic. There's 2 lanes per direction, plus a center left turn lane. It's a fairly long crossing distance for pedestrians. Along the corridor, we have 3 stop-controlled intersections where these road user interactions can be made a bit more complex. So you have the pedestrians crossing across 5 lanes, and then vehicles turning left, right from the side streets. So because of the higher volumes, and we're going to see some numbers in a bit, along Algonquin Avenue, there may be some difficulty, particularly in the peak hours, to find gaps in traffic to enter the main road. And there's also some operational issues with the provincial intersection at Highway 1117, where the queuing tends to spill back a long way from towards Algonquin Avenue. Here's the collision history that we considered in our study. So we reviewed the period between 2015 to 2019 plus 2022. Doesn't mean that 2020 and 2021, when we had the COVID impact on traffic patterns, doesn't mean that those years are not important. It's just that as engineers, we try to identify patterns of collisions. So that consistency of data in normal years is preferred for this type of analysis. So out of those 117 collisions, we had 20 that resulted in injuries, and 6 of those involved pedestrians, one of which resulted in 2 fatalities. And we are also aware that there was another pedestrian fatality in 2020. Again, it's not as in this data set that we reviewed. We are aware of it. It's just that a discussion I mentioned about identifying patterns. And because pedestrian collisions, they tend to be more rare, it's difficult to identify patterns. But all that to say is that we are aware that there were more pedestrian fatalities, but it wouldn't change our findings and recommendations in this context. In the circle there, we can see the distribution of collisions by impact type. So we can see that turning movement collisions are almost 40% of all collisions in the corridor. And then we have rear ends, side swipes, and others in smaller proportions. On the right side on the map, you can see there's some color coding. The red boxes, they are the pedestrian collisions. They're the ones that are more likely to result in severe injury because obviously a vehicle impacting a pedestrian, it's probably the highest risk to road users. And then in yellow, we have angle and turning movement collisions, or T-bone, as some people call. Those are very commonly or tend to result in a bit more severity compared to, for example, rear ends and side swipe collisions that are in the green box. So this is just to highlight more or less where those collisions with more or less potential for injury are happening. In terms of traffic volumes along the corridor, there's about 17 to 1,800 vehicles in the peak hour with both directions combined. And we have some queuing generated at some left turn movements, particularly the northbound left turn at Highway 1117 and southbound at Lansdowne Avenue. The consequence of that is we have an increased risk for pedestrians crossing the road, particularly because it might be difficult for vehicles or for drivers and pedestrians to see each other, and especially when you have 2 lanes of traffic in the same direction. If sometimes one lane comes to a stop because of the queues, but the other one is free-flowing, the drivers may not expect the pedestrians to cross in front of the stopped vehicles, so that increases the risk as well for pedestrians. Next step then, we conducted a field investigation. It was around November 2024. So our main observations, again, the queues, northbound typically reaching Maplewood Avenue and occasionally going a little longer. And southbound, they weren't a major concern, but occasionally they would get close to that medical building at Greenwood. Pedestrian activity at that time of the site visit, it wasn't very heavy. It was fairly light between the parking lot on the east side of Algonquin and the medical building. and a bit moderate between or to and from other businesses along the road. But because of the cold weather at that time of the year, it's possible that the pedestrian volumes were a bit lower than typical. In a couple of slides, we're going to see the summer volumes, which are a bit more considerable. After the field investigation, then we combine all that with the collision patterns that we did, that we reviewed, and consider a few potential solutions, right? So what could help address the concerns along this corridor? So we looked at pedestrian crossovers, traffic signals, raised medians, turning restrictions, and enforcement. Some of these, or most of these, are included in this 70-plus countermeasures from the road safety strategy. And then, not to get too technical here, but just to give you an idea of what kind of information we consider for all these different treatments, right? First, the pedestrian crossover. We follow the provincial manual for pedestrian crossing treatments. So in a nutshell, there's 3 different criteria, one being volumes, distance from the nearest crossing alternative, and then the presence of desire lines. If you meet 2 out of these 3 criteria, you have a justification for a pedestrian crossover. And we can see here that we meet or we exceed the volume criteria with 200 and something pedestrians in the summer, and the minimum threshold is 100 over 8 hours. The distance, it is a bit close to the Norwood intersection, Norwood-Lansdowne, which has a traffic signal, but we do have those pedestrian desire lines. Pedestrians are not all walking to the signals to cross. They are crossing mid-block, so that characterizes desire lines. So while two of these three criteria are met, and that would be justification for a pedestrian crossover, there are other elements that make it not suitable for Algonquin Avenue. We have 5 lanes, and then the manual says that it shouldn't be used where you have more than 4 lanes. And also because of the high traffic volumes, that could be a concern in terms of compliance by drivers, right? The other issue is that you have a couple of other signals nearby, being Lansdowne and the provincial intersection at the north. And the pedestrian crossover cannot be coordinated, so you can't make it run with progression, right? Once you push the button at a crossover for the lights to start flashing, they have to start flashing within 3 seconds, and the signals are not going to work like that, so it's going to affect the operations of the corridor. And the other issue is, especially in this type of environment where there's a lot going on, businesses, a lot of activity, because they're also a bit less familiar to drivers, you can have some concerns with lower compliance. Again, especially because of the presence of the other signals. They are used to the signals, and then in the middle you put something that's a bit different. So they might be looking at the next signal and don't realize that there's a pedestrian trying to cross. We also looked at the criteria for pedestrian signals. So we technically we don't meet the minimum requirement for the level of volume of Algonquin. We need 236 pedestrian crossings. We're 10 below that. It's close enough, and probably with increased traffic over the years, right, as the city grows, you're probably going to reach that threshold at some point. And then with consideration to the concerns of the pedestrian crossover, we came to the conclusion that the signal is a better solution for the pedestrian issue at Algonquin. In terms of other safety measures, not related to the pedestrian issues, if you remember from a previous slide, we had a pattern of turning movement and angle collisions at Maplewood. And some concerns with this intersection in terms of its design is, one, it's misaligned on its east and west leg, so there's a bit of an offset. you do have pedestrians crossing at that location, and you have that higher speed right turn channel coming from Highway 1117. So all that kind of meets together at the Maplewood intersection, which increases complexity of the interaction. And then if you have vehicles waiting to make a left turn and they're stopped on the road, with all that, those different movements, pedestrians, vehicles going in and out, it can increase the risk of collisions because of the complexity. We did, so our recommendation for this location is to restrict those left turns through a median extension coming from the north side to prevent those movements and prevent those collision patterns with left turning vehicles. And we did an operational assessment, like a traffic simulation, to see what would be the effect of redirecting those vehicles to the side streets to eventually use the signal recommended at Elmwood. And we basically simulate the length of the queues generated on the side streets, and we got around 5 to 6 vehicles maximum queues typically, which is fairly normal for this type of environment with lots of commercial activity. So that's not considered a major traffic impact. Right. The other issue we were looking at was the access to the gas station at the corner of Lansdowne. There's concerns with people waiting to make a left turn into the Tim Hortons on the same property south of the intersection. We looked at a few options, including maybe redirecting the movement of trucks, or making some of these entrances right in, right out, or maybe even opening up a new access to Ann Street. But because of the geometric limitations, no other options are feasible. Either because the trucks, the only option they have is to make that specific movement. They come in on Algonquin, unload the fuel on the pump there, and they have to come out on Lansdowne. They're not able to do other maneuvers. So, and Ann Street on the back side of the property, there's a difference in height that makes it pretty difficult to build another driveway for the vehicles to come down. So the only feasible option there is to restrict the left turn or prohibit the left turn with the exception of trucks for that entrance. That would make the passenger cars that want to go to the Tim Hortons have to make a left turn on Lansdowne and use that access. And then to still allow the trucks to make that movement, the city can put a mountable, a median, which is designed to be mountable by trucks. So that movement can still be allowed while preventing the smaller vehicles from making that movement. And then they use the, as I said, the Lansdowne access. This is likely to require a little bit of enforcement education effort in the beginning until people get used, but the idea is to use this. There are options with rubber medians that can be tested, monitored, and then if it's working, then great. If not, then other solutions can be tested. So in summary, here are our recommendations for the study area. Turning restrictions at Maplewood Avenue, the left turn specifically. New signal at the Elmwood intersection to facilitate the pedestrian crossings. And that left turn restrictions except for trucks at the gas station at the entrance south of Lansdowne. In terms of next step then, we just had a public open house where we collected some feedback from the public. I assume councilors will have some questions, so we're going to take all that input in, and then the city staff will refine these recommendations, bring a recommendation to council, and then once approved, design, implementation, and monitoring. So this was our presentation. Thank you very much, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much for that presentation, and thank you for being available at the open house that we had this afternoon. There were a lot of people that were engaged and attended that session. I heard a lot of good information. I saw Megan diligently taking notes as well, too, so it was an excellent process, and Adam. So I'll now go around and just go through everyone and see who has questions. Your Worship?
Thanks very much, Chair. In your presentation, just a few slides back, you were talking about the pedestrian. I'm confused. The signal is recommended. Is that a full traffic signal or a pedestrian signal?
Exactly, a full traffic signal, because even though we base the need for a pedestrian crossing on the pedestrian volumes, we're also trying to address the other issues with the left turn, so that signal can provide a way of people to go around the block to make the movements that would be restricted at Maplewood.
And if I could, Chair, thank you for that explanation. With that around the block, you know, with the configuration of the streets that come off of Lansdowne, where it's a blocked entrance into that side, do we think that, you know, with that signalized, the new signal that's proposed, the Home Hardware has a drive-through right to the back to Highland, or not Highland, but off of Highland, on that. Is there going to be a substantial impact on that, with that sort of knowledge that we know what might happen, or people's just human nature?
Yeah, so that's something that came up in the open house. That's a very good question for sure. So one thing that we want to make clear is that these are the recommendations, like taking it to the ultimate condition, right? There are some things that the city can do, such as designing the median in a way that, again, trucks, because trucks would be the main concern with that, those businesses on Maplewood. For passenger cars, it's fairly easy to go around the block and use the signal, but there are ways to design the median to allow the larger vehicles to still make the left turn while preventing the smaller vehicles. It wouldn't address 100% of the concern with the left turns, but the idea is to reduce exposure, right? If you have 100 vehicles versus 10 vehicles making that movement, the risk of collisions is still reduced. So there are options through design to refine a bit of the recommendation and make sure that everyone's needs are accommodated.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Horsfield?
Thank you, Chair. I do have a few questions. So with the proposed limitation of allowing left turns from Algonquin to the side streets being identified, was there also research done on the side streets trying to turn left onto Algonquin? Because I've personally witnessed, I would say, more infractions or accidents of vehicles turning left from those side streets than from vehicles using the middle turning lane to turn left off of it.
Yeah, we looked at the collision patterns, and usually what we do when we're dealing with turning movement collisions is we try to establish if there's a specific combination of movements that is problematic over the others. And in this case, there wasn't a pattern. It's kind of all movements, it's just a type of collision really, so it doesn't matter which way they're coming from. The signal at Elmwood would help with that, because then it would make it easier for people to make those left turns without having to worry too much about looking for gaps on Algonquin Avenue.
Okay, and then just my concern with the barrier being established at Maplewood to prevent those left turns, the individuals would then have, or the vehicles would then have to travel all the way down Algonquin, turn down Lansdowne, and meander the back roads to get over to those establishments?
So it might be a bit difficult to see on the screen, but there's some green, purple, orange lines. So the idea is that they just do a loop around the block. So for example, if you're coming from the north, I think it's the green line, you could turn right on Maplewood, go around the block, come out on Elmwood, and use the signal, right? And then the different combinations of movements have different routes, but it's always around the block where you have the north of the medical center.
And
So they wouldn't go all the way down to Norwood.
And if I may to add, that they also have the option to come south to the Elmwood intersection, and then we can design a protected U-turn during the signal in order to accommodate that movement.
Okay. Yeah, I think, as a comment, it will obviously take some time if that was the plan to implement that turn right and then come back out to an intersection. I think that would take some time as a challenge for individuals to consider. When it comes to the medical building parking that's across from the medical building, was there any consideration in closing off the parking access from Algonquin to encourage folks to take the back roads to get to those parking lots, and then that would, having a fence there would force them to the Algonquin or to the Norwood intersection?
Is that a question for Megan?
Yeah, hi. Just a couple things. Although the medical building has been kind of at the forefront of the conversation, what we've noticed, and Giovanni and Sarush can speak to this a little bit more as well, is we're finding that pedestrians are wanting to cross for a variety of reasons, not just the medical component of it. We have people who are crossing from residential over to the other residential, or businesses, vice versa. It's honestly, like Giovanni has said, it's a mixture. So it seems as though a solution is probably needed one way or another.
I'm good for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Malloy?
Oh, I'm allowed to ask questions.
Oh, are you? Okay, I'm sorry, I wasn't sure. My apologies. Councillor Inch?
Thank you for the presentation. I can't vote, but I can ask questions. Yes, so what I'm wondering is,
Can I,
I'm
point of
going,
order?
I am actually, according to the municipal act, you are not to participate if you declared a conflict.
Councillor
I've-
Lowry participated
I'm-
yesterday.
And yesterday, I did some
You were
research.
unaware? Is that it?
I did some
Thank you
research.
very much.
That's fine. We'll move on.
Okay. Councillor Malloy?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the two that spoke earlier, because you asked some of my questions. My concern was around that home hardware turning point. I'm trying to wrap my head around, similar to similar Deputy Mayor Horsfield, about turning on Lansdowne, and I understand that this is a solution that's presented, because maybe there aren't really any better solutions. But I just find that vehicles would then be going down residential streets that may not be built for so much traffic. Again, I'm not an expert in that regard, but I feel like that would take some adjustment, and there would be probably a bit of opposition, I would anticipate. So my questions are, and you mentioned in the 6 years that was studied, there was 117 collisions. Are those in regards to the data set, is that reported from police? If so, that would then be underreported, is that correct?
Those are the collisions that are reported by police or self-reported. And I agree, there might be some collisions that didn't result in that much damage that is not reported, and it's not in that data set. However, when we are dealing with collision data, we always look at it as a sample to extract patterns. So that's why we still think the period that we had available to us is providing us with the patterns that we were looking for.
That's really helpful, thank you. Another question that I had, if that's okay, Chair, is around business owners, and perhaps this is outside of the purview, so please inform me, but if I was a business owner, say at Maplewood and Algonquin, and I heard that they're now restricting left turns, I wouldn't be overly pleased. And so is it a best practice to engage with those businesses? Of course, I know the priority here is safety, and I recognize that, and I do recognize that Algonquin is could be made safer for sure. But I'm just also thinking about those relationships as well.
Thanks for your question. I can go into a little bit of detail for that. We are definitely aware that the businesses would have an opinion on this. So just so that everybody's aware, we have hand-delivered handouts, posters to the individual businesses with my contact information. I have heard from a lot of businesses. I can't speak to exactly the ones that maybe haven't reached out, but I've definitely heard from about half a dozen. Mixture of opinions all around, but we have been in communication with them. There were also a number of them at the open house tonight, so we did gather their feedback as well. In addition to that, we also had an online form that people could submit their feedback. I've been accepting phone calls. I had meetings with the individual businesses that were wanting to meet with me, and then obviously the open house, and I've received letters. I've heard a lot from a variety of people, but yes, we have reached out to the businesses and have had lots of lengthy conversations with them about it.
Appreciate that engagement. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor King?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for the presentation. A couple of questions, and I want to speak to the elephant in the room. And of course, that would be the Highway 1711 corridor, specifically the left-hand turn southbound traffic. That's a long light. And what that is actually creating is a tremendous amount of traffic northbound on Algonquin Avenue. And we all know it. We've watched it for a number of years. I'm just wondering how that would help the circumstance, the planning that we're doing now, because I really think the problem revolves around Highway 17 and 11, and we're experiencing that right through the city at all of the interchanges. So I'm interested in your discussion with the MTO, whether or not there's timing issues that could actually allow freer northbound traffic at the light, and whether or not, because of the traffic southbound on 11, whether or not that light can be shortened to allow that traffic to move. Because quite frankly, I've sat there at the Esso service station waiting to move northbound. So I'm interested in that, but I do have a couple of other questions.
So just, I talk about one observation and about the recommendations that we have, and Megan, if you have some follow-up clarification you can provide. We have noticed that in our review, and we have noticed that the queue for the northbound traffic on Algonquin at Highway 1117 spills back even to Maplewood. And we believe that the installation of traffic signal at the intersection that we are recommending is going to meter the traffic going northbound, and it's going to cause fewer traffic reaching at that intersection at the same time, and it's going to shorten the queue northbound, which can provide an opportunity to redesign the signal timing at Highway 11 and 17 in order to give more green time to more critical movements. That's an opportunity. But I don't know if, Megan, you want to have some follow-up.
Yeah, I was just going to add that City Engineer Alan Carell has been in touch with the MTO about our plans and the proposal, and they seem to be in favor of the proposed changes. It seems that they kind of concur with the opinion of that it would actually help with the issues, the congestion issues that we're seeing in that area. So I won't speak out of turn because I wasn't in that meeting, but we have had those discussions and would continue to have those discussions with the MTO as we would move forward with whatever solution we propose here.
Supplementary, if I might, thank you. So I guess, and this is kind of a big issue, when the queue changes southbound on that turning left signal, southbound onto the bypass, obviously then it backs up traffic to other intersections further up towards Thibault Hill, creating a real problem. So I think, I don't really think that these proposals, although they are good, really are addressing the root problem that we face there. And I have one other question I wanted to ask you, and it revolves around bus shelters and the location of bus shelters in that corridor. Is it your recommendation that these bus shelters should be located at signaled intersections as opposed to midway through 4-lane highways, basically?
I can take that one. Yeah, excellent question. I would agree it is much safer to have the bus stops near a pedestrian control crossing, because bus stops are also something that create those pedestrian desire lines. So with the signal, you also have the opportunity to redesign the transit system so that pedestrians or the bus passengers leave the vehicle and they have a control crossing right there. It minimizes the mid-block crossings, which reduces the risk for them. So that's definitely something to take into account. One comment I would add with regard to the queues or the problems at the provincial intersection is, although it's outside of our scope, we point out that the queues that we observed, they introduce or they increase the risk for pedestrians, but the need for a controlled pedestrian crossing, based on the manuals, the engineering manuals, it's purely based on how many lanes or the crossing distance for pedestrians, the volume of pedestrians, and the volume of vehicles along Algonquin. So even though those queues increase the risk a little bit, the justification for that controlled crossing would still exist even if there were no operational issues at the northern intersection.
Councillor Lowry?
Thank you, Chair. A couple things. With the mid-block or PXO in front of the medical building, you said the width of the 5 lanes is too much. Is there a way, if there was a median in the middle, to divide that into 2 so that it is not? Because my concern is that the direct line from that parking lot to, and so it's a very busy intersection there, and the chances of people going up and across and back down again, and many of them are elderly, is problematic. So with education and enforcement and maybe breaking that passage up into 2 sort of stints, as it were. I've seen it done in other jurisdictions where it's a median, there's gates there, there's people can go across that way, because I'm concerned that the investment in, although lights are a good control mechanism and expensive, is that a possibility?
That's actually a good question, and it was something to consider because the manuals, they mention that if you have a 4-lane cross-section with a refuge, which would be the median, then you can use the pedestrian crossover. But we just want to highlight that the intent of the signal at the Elmwood intersection is not to address just the pedestrian crossing concern, is also to provide an opportunity for the vehicles at Elmwood Street that would not be able to turn left anymore to have an alternative, right? The other, I would also add that we still have those parking lots where you may still need to allow some left turns south of the signal. And then if you put that median to allow for that pedestrian crossover, then you would have to prevent that left turn into the parking lot on the east side. And then people are going to go at other locations try to reach the parking lot. So we're trying to look at the corridor holistically and try to address multiple issues with the minimum number of countermeasures possible.
Because I guess what I'm thinking is that the biggest risk is the pedestrian collision, right? So
Yeah.
you have the left-hand turn, and it's a driver error or whatever, but it's the pedestrian risks that I would be concerned about. Secondly, in those collisions, was speed a factor in those collisions? Like, is there a potential that maybe speed limits could be altered there to, have an enforcement zone similar to a school zone or something to reduce that quickly? And with education, enforcement could also be something that could be introduced as well.
Yeah, I don't remember the details, but I believe the speeding was not a reported issue in terms of a pattern on this corridor, and it already has a low speed limit, 50 kilometers per hour. Reducing even further on a 4-lane cross-section and being an arterial road, it may not be that effective because there is research out there that says that drivers choose their speed based on the design of the road, right? So it could allow an opportunity to maybe increase fines for speeding, but the issue then is the manpower to have consistent enforcement, right?
And one thing that I can add is due to the queuing that we observed for the northbound traffic behind Highway 1117, that itself reduces the operating speeds along this corridor. And with this recommendation of the signal, we even have more impact on reducing the speeds along the corridor.
And so, but you don't think that with that, the traffic infiltration in those neighborhoods is going to be a factor?
It's a side effect for sure, but there are mitigation measures like traffic calming that can be implemented to encourage those drivers that are taking that detour to slow down.
Thank you, Chair.
Several. Thank you for your presentation. So mid-block, you talked about the fact that mid-block across from the medical center, there's pedestrians crossing mid-block. As traffic experts, what's the rule of thumb for the people, if people are crossing mid-block before we implement any changes, if people are crossing mid-block, what are you and I as drivers supposed to do with these individuals that are not crossing at a lit intersection?
Sorry.
Do we stop traffic and let them go? Or how do you and I as drivers deal with those individuals that are crossing mid-block? A 5-lane road.
So from the driver's perspective, everyone is expected to follow the rules of the road, the speed limit, and obviously if a pedestrian crosses in front of you, you're supposed to try to avoid a collision, right? Defensive driving. But from the engineering perspective, we try to design or improve the road network so that the system itself is self-enforcing, right? So that's why when you have a long distance between controlled crossings, you try to identify those desired lines and provide an additional opportunity for crossing.
So we're designing this for the lowest common denominator, the people that don't want to cross at the lit intersection.
The typical distance in the manuals for considering, or let's say for writing out the possibility of a new crossing is about 200 meters. I think the distance between the two signals at Highway 1117 and Lansdowne is it's almost 400 meters. So you're well within that range where an additional crossing would be suitable.
And if I may, at the beginning of the presentation, I explained that we need to always consider the Vision Zero philosophy. Vision Zero, when we talk about it, is we have to implement multiple layers of protection. So if one or two layers fail, it doesn't result in fatality or serious injury. So this is a very good example of that case, that people may make mistakes, people may do jaywalking, but our system, we have to design it in a way that, first of all, we accommodate reasonable opportunities for them to do the crossings here. As Giovanni mentioned, if we have 600 meters without any controlled crossing, that's going to cause problem. People are going to violate the rules of the road. But if we provide that, and basically we are adding a protective layer that can prevent injuries and fatalities to happen.
Okay. And you're confident in your modeling, in your design, in your experience, by putting a light at Elmwood and putting a crosswalk there, that we think that the people that are illegally crossing today are going to make the 100-meter trek to Elmwood and cross it, and then walk the 100 meters back to the Medical Arts Building, as opposed to us implementing all of this and them there still continue to be jaywalking.
It's being realistic. It's not going to be 100% of people that are going to do that, but if you channel, let's say, half of the pedestrians who are doing that, you're already having a 50% reduction in the risk, right? So again, the idea is to design the network providing those opportunities for a safe crossing and reduce the risk. Like the zero fatalities and serious injuries, they are a long-term goal, and then slowly we implement measures that are going to improve slowly over time to eventually reach that goal.
With the design and putting those barriers so that people can't be turning left onto Greenwood, Highland, to go to any of those businesses along there, we're now pushing people further down the block, and the first left turn is going to be all the way down at Lansdowne, or they're going to go in through the residence and come around. They're going to turn right and go down, go around the Medical Arts Building, come to the light, and then turn there, and then they can turn and they can make the right-hand turn. So we're putting, to some other councillors' concerns, we're now putting highway traffic or collector or arterial traffic on residential roads. And Google is a great tool. Lots of people that are coming down from the north use it. I use it when I try to leave Toronto. They tell me the fastest route. And so Google is going to push people down those roads. So how does that offset putting that amount of traffic on residential roads impact with your traffic safety numbers when there's no sidewalks on them?
That's a good question, and we did review that. Again, the colors might be a bit difficult to read, but we looked at the volumes of the left turn movements at Maplewood, and then we found what would be the logical route through the side streets that they would take. And we're usually talking about 20 to 60 vehicles in the peak hour. However, remember that the total volumes on Algonquin, they're 1,700 to 800. So the vast majority of those vehicles, they are really traveling through the study areas. The left turn restrictions that are going to create some detours into the local streets, it's a very small proportion of that. And as I mentioned, there was another question about this. If there are concerns with the increased traffic on the side streets, there are traffic calming measures that can be implemented to slow people down on those routes. If you're going to those business destinations, yes, Google Maps will likely send you around the block to use the signal. But again, the vast majority of people are just going through, coming from the highway and going further south.
Yeah, thank you. In regards to the modeling, you shared it with the MTO, and you had a meeting with them, and similar to Councillor King's issue or comment, is the fact that, you know, that at noon hour, you try to go from downtown to any of the stores on the other side of the highway, you're backed up almost to Lansdowne. Councillor King's very fortunate that he gets all the way up to Maplewood. I'm envious of that. But the fact is that do you not see putting an extra set of lights is now going to push that even further back, down past Lansdowne, towards the city core?
So maybe I would clarify that when right now, when the traffic gets into Algonquin going north, in order to go to the highway or cross the highway, there is from Norwood until Highway 1117, there is no controlled intersection. The queuing that we observed at the maximum reaches Elmwood. Now, with having a signal midway, basically you are dividing the traffic progression in a way that they reach to that Highway 1117 in different batches. And that results in that lowers the delay at the Highway 1117 intersection, but adds some delay at Elmwood. And based off the modeling that we did, the summation of these two delays are equivalent with the delay that vehicles already experience at Highway 1117.
But with the fact that we don't control the lights at Highway 17 and Algonquin, that's controlled by the Ministry of Transportation. We have no say over that. Our team can control what we can do inside with the current signal methods, but we don't have any control over what happens at 17. And so I'm not as optimistic. And again, I spend a lot of time in a car driving around this city and others, and I'm just not as optimistic as you. And I'm hoping I'm wrong. Thank you.
I can give you a bit of a technical clarification, and then maybe Megan can speak to the conversations with MTO, but when we do traffic signals on a corridor, we usually select a master intersection that dictates the cycle length, right? And then in that case, we wouldn't touch the Highway 1117 signal timing, but then when the timing for the new signal is designed, it would be coordinated with that signal. So that signal would dictate the coordination, and the new signal would follow that. So if the MTO changes something, then the city would discuss with them and make the adjustments. But if you want to add something.
Yeah, I can just add that, like I said, I didn't personally speak with the MTO, but we have had conversations with them, and they've been in favor of this change, citing that it would help with the congestion issues that we have. But of course, at any point, we're going to continue the conversation with them, and if there's opportunities for improvement, we'll see if that's an option, if there's anything they can do on their end, and see how we can link it all together, so that we could hopefully make some improvements.
And if I can add, when we did develop the road safety strategy, MTO was one of the stakeholders. And I agree that there as a partner to the city, they need to be engaged. And there should be, as one of the items that I explained, safety is a shared responsibility. So there need to be continuous conversation with MTO, although it's difficult, but it needs to happen in order to make sure that at least the signals that we are putting along Algonquin are coordinated.
You're okay? Thank you very much. Some of the, I'm just going to, they're not questions, but just you can reiterate for when you guys take it back. So Google Maps, I was saying that if it's going to change no left turns, I don't know if there's a way to tell Google Maps to update so that we're not getting people that are getting frustrated thinking they can turn left, but they can't. Education, you know, nice drivers are a cause of the accident a lot of times, right? One person stops, this person can't see, somebody gets T-boned, right? So I think an education campaign really needs to happen. That little median or the little hump or whatever at the Esso. I don't think that's going to deter people from turning left. If at the McDonald's where we have a no turning left, people still will turn left on McEwen. So I don't know if there's a better way to deal with that, or if it's just maybe having police officers sit there for a little while. But there has to be something else, because I don't think that's going to stop it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say that ultimately I think that, as they mentioned in their presentation, it's going to be an iterative process. So if after a while we take a look, usually it's about a year. I'm probably speaking for you guys. Feel free to jump in. But we could be monitoring it, and if it's not sustainable, we can explore other options. It's kind of like a tiered approach. Also, it's my understanding that there's different levels of medians that can be used to make it really difficult for those types of vehicles to travel over. And I'll let you, do you have any other comments related to that?
Then I was concerned about the heavy traffic and the backup. I guess we'll have to trust you guys are the experts and do the math, because I kept thinking the same thing, and I find that the traffic seems to have gotten even heavier and going further down and backing up all the way to Lansdowne, which I don't know if what's changed lately, but I feel like it's gotten heavier and it's taking a lot longer to travel that corridor. So I think that it will push people to other, like trying to get there. So again, I'm hoping that we're looking at not just this corridor, but how it impacts all the smaller ones. Even the left-hand turns going down the smaller streets, there's still, that we look at it, like you said, how you have the traffic calming measures, but I hope that when we do this, that we look at, we're not just doing this in isolation, but we're going to do those traffic calming measures in tandem. And then I had a question about the buses, and if we ever looked at the number of riders at each of the stops to see where the heavier traffic bus stops were, because, and should those be moved slightly or whatever a little bit, but I know that you don't want to move them too much, because if you have accessibility issues, but I just thought that might be something else to look at. And then also U-turns. Will we start seeing more U-turns, or people attempting to do U-turns if we're adding more signalized, so that they don't end up having to go all the way around and then they just do a U-turn to get to their destination quicker?
Yeah, thanks for the questions. I guess I'll start with the bus stops. We didn't do a detailed analysis of volumes and where people get on and off the buses. But we try to look at the land use, right? So we have the medical center, which is a sensitive pedestrian generator, and the parking lot on the other side. So that's a considerable pedestrian desire line. So having the signal at that point is probably the most beneficial. And we also looked at the distance, as I mentioned before, between the existing signals. You don't want to have two signals very close together and the other, because then you increase that distance for pedestrians to potentially cross mid-block. So you try to balance the spacing between signals as best you can. Sorry, your last question.
Oh, it's about U-turns.
U-turns, yes. I think Sarush mentioned earlier, this is a planning level recommendation, right? The next step, if approved, and as it goes forward, it goes through the design process. And then there's a possibility of designing a protected face for the U-turns, and that could potentially reduce the amount of traffic that would go into the side streets. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we try to go all the way with the worst case scenario, right, to make sure that it would still work in a way, but there can still be refinements in the design stage to make some of these things a little better as feasible.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions, and apologies if they've been asked already, but the issue seems to be pedestrian traffic from the parking spots on the east side of the road coming over to the medical center. That seems to be the point of concern. There are some turning issues. I know at the gas station, the challenge there is that for the refueling trucks, they just can't get in tight enough where we propose a meridian, so they have to use the intersection. But the real issue seems to be pedestrian traffic crossing where they shouldn't, but people want to go where they want to go. Was consideration given to a walled meridian in front of the healthcare building for the length of that block that would require people to go, well, I guess towards the traffic lights if they're there. Because one concern would be that even though it's a short distance, if it's still an open passageway, people don't go to the lights now, even though they realize there's risk. They'll take their chances and just go straight across. So in conjunction with the traffic lights, was there consideration given to a walled meridian that would basically restrict people from crossing in the middle of the road?
So do you mean like a physical barrier to
15 feet high,
Prevail.
barbed wire on top.
Yeah, I think that question was asked during the open house as well. The major concern in North America and Canada specifically is the snow management, right? So I mentioned to someone, I'm originally from Brazil, we don't have snow, so we put those barriers in, not like 15 foot tall, but like metal barriers. But pedestrians, if they want, they might still jump over and go through. But the key issue here is that we try to reduce the distance between controlled crossings, right? And special sensitivity being a medical center, so we probably have senior people needing to cross the road, right? So as Sarush mentioned before, the road safety strategy, Vision Zero concept is designing a system that meets people's needs in a way that's going to reduce fatalities and serious injuries. We know that people make mistakes, sometimes a bit more intentional than non-intentional, but the philosophy is to provide the elements so that they have the choice at least to go to the proper location to cross. And as I also mentioned earlier, maybe not 100% of those people crossing mid-block will go to the signal, but if we have a 50% reduction in risk, that's already a huge safety improvement.
And if I add that, again, this is a plan. It involves monitoring. And if we see that the recommendations are not working as we expected, there is also always room for little adjustments to make crossings more safe.
Okay. And then second question, if I could, the issue around the Medical Arts Building seems to be parking. Was there any discussion, or maybe that's a city issue, of working with the property owner to acquire more property in the area for the required parking?
I think ultimately, this has been something that's been that's been discussed. A lot of alternatives have been discussed, over the years. Ultimately, I think I had said this earlier, but people are crossing for a variety of reasons, whether it's residential people crossing from one to access the business on the other side or vice versa. Based on our information, we're seeing that there is a desire for this. Obviously, the medical building is definitely generating a certain amount of foot traffic there. But yeah, we have looked at alternatives, and it seems as though this providing a controlled crossing seems to be the best out of all of the alternatives that we've looked at so far.
And I think I agree, it seems to be a straightforward solution. Obrigado. Obrigado? Boa tarde.
Had me.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, you're smiling, so I guess Councillor Main behaved himself, yeah. All right. I guess there's a couple things I'd just like some clarification on. And I'm not, some of them I can't even envision, but there's lots of things I can't envision, doesn't mean they're right or wrong. So if we had a dedicated or a protected U-turn, and I'm trying to envision this at the lights, so does that mean that if I'm driving a big truck, which no one should allow, by the way, and I go to do a U-turn and turn, I have to go to the far lane because that's the point of making the turn, correct? So it would be clear, theoretically, for me to be able to do that? Like it works out that way?
For trucks, there would have to be some truck route management, right? So there
Yeah.
are legal signs, regulatory signs that you can use to guide them to the proper location. As part of the design, there is simulations of the turning path of the truck. It's most likely wouldn't work at that U-turn movement, but as we mentioned earlier, the design of the median at Maplewood could be made so that trucks are still able to make the left turn without having to go down and do the U-turn, while preventing the smaller vehicles from turning left.
So is that the rolling median
Yeah.
that you're talking about? And you have-
Yeah, roll over,
So
yes.
trucks can roll over it, but if I do in my car, I'm gonna have a problem, so I shouldn't do it, kind of thing? Is that the
Pretty
idea?
much, yeah. And you supplement with prohibition signs, trucks accepted, right? So that's a possibility. But again, it still goes through design, and these details can be refined.
Do we, just, I guess this is a question for Megan, do we have those anywhere in town that we could look at, or to know they're effective?
I think this would probably be, nothing comes to mind right now. This would probably be one of the first locations that we'd be doing something like this. We do have a somewhat similar location on, it's not exactly the same, but on McEwen, the McDonald's on McEwen. That one is more flat, but there's permitted, I believe, left-hand turns through there, only under exceptional circumstances. I'm not 100% sure on that, but this would be the first one of its kind. It would be raised so that it would create that friction, which would make it
Visually obvious, like it would be?
yeah, and I think it would also, to a certain extent, police itself. If someone's turning where they're not supposed to, they're going to get a little bit of pushback if they're not supposed to turn. If we, again, as they mentioned, if it becomes an issue, we can take that feedback and re-examine what's there to physically prevent people from turning there.
Okay. Okay, I was just waiting till that part was done. The other part, and I'm going to assume this is obvious, but if you were going to put up lights and signalize intersection and start diverting some traffic, extra traffic, additional traffic down, say if I lived on Elmwood, I would want to know that there's going to be consideration to what Elmwood looks like now. Like there's no sidewalks, it even seems almost narrow, and it's not even, there's a lot of parking there that makes it even worse on the roads there, because again, the people going to the medical center are parking clear down those roads and blocking it up. We would have to do some work and extend it. Maybe we put underwater drainage in there and we can have a sidewalk. Like, we're gonna have to address that road. That's a given that it would be part of the project, isn't it?
Yeah, so I can speak to that. I've spoken with residents on Elmwood specifically. Residential properties are obviously going to be impacted in addition to this. And so, yeah, traffic calming has been kind of the direction that we've taken on this. And yeah, like there's going to be impacts on the side streets as well. So we'll have to take a look at it. Giovanni, do you mind speaking to the actual volume of traffic that might be rerouting onto those side streets and how it might impact maybe their operations right now?
Sure, I think we have a figure. Again, sorry for the callers, but I think Elmwood would experience about 100 extra vehicles in the peak hour. In the context of a local street with some business nearby, that's not a huge amount. You can have local streets with 200, 300, 500 vehicles even. And then in the simulation that we did for the increased traffic with the signal in place, we would have, yeah, I think it's on this slide here, the resulting queues would be around 5 to 6 vehicles, which again is typically perfectly fine to clear within one signal cycle. So we're not expecting to have long-lasting queues. So you would have those 5, 6 vehicles, and then the next green light they would clear.
And if I may add, when you, right now, under the existing condition, vehicles on Elmwood need to wait for a gap, especially those who are making a left turn, the stream of vehicles going along Algonquin northbound and southbound. But with the signal, they have a certain period of time, green
Yeah.
time, that they can complete their maneuver. So we don't expect that the additional 50 to 100 vehicles is going to cause any operational issues for the Elmwood.
Okay, but we would check it out and make sure, like, if parking or something's an issue, we'd be addressing it, right? If we go down to less than 2 lanes?
Exactly, and ultimately, like, we'll take a look at it, and ultimately, like I said, it's, like they mentioned earlier, it's an iterative process, so as traffic patterns start to reestablish, it would be, okay, is this working, is this not working, do we need to explore something else? That would be the intention behind this exercise.
I can't believe anybody would want to sit there and try to go up towards the highway. Like, you'd be there a long time and you're playing chicken trying to get out of there, so I can't imagine it, but, alrighty. And the thought of having a signalization, so you'd have a light here, you're gonna have a light here, the majority of crossing is going on here. If we can't get them to walk down to the lights here, how are we gonna get them to walk up to the lights there and back down? I don't know if my visual is working for you or not, but I just can't get my head around how we're gonna get them to go to one set of lights when we can't get them to go to the existing ones now. Or if I'm missing something, I apologize, but,
Yeah, again, it's about providing that additional option for them to cross. And as I mentioned earlier, realistically, we're not going to get 100% of pedestrians
okay.
converging to that signal. But if we had a good proportion of them within a certain distance that will find it safer to use the signal rather than taking their chances across heavy traffic, that's still a pretty big safety improvement.
And
So-
if
then
I
controlling the traffic that is there as well, better, probably helps with that same ultimate goal, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And if I can add, still with the signal at Elmwood, the medical center is way closer to Elmwood compared to Norwood. So, because the next controlled crossing is at the Norwood Avenue. So we believe that we are reducing the distance to access to a controlled crossing, and it should be result in better condition for pedestrian to cross.
Yes, that distance is 160 meters. So if you account for the two directions, you're reducing the distance they have to walk by 320 meters, right? So that's, I would say that increases the chances that people are going to use it, even though, as I mentioned, it's probably not going to be 100%, but
Yeah,
it's a big improvement.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, do you have more questions? I still look. What time have we got? Okay, Councillor Malott?
Thank you, Chair. Very quick, I keep just looking, I'm on Google Maps and I keep just looking back and like just turning around on the Elmwood location. I definitely agree that it seems to be a lot closer to the parking lot. My question is the sight line going left onto Algonquin from Elmwood, if that makes sense. I remember finding that intersection, it's a little bit hard to see up Elmwood. I'm sorry, up Algonquin. Do you believe that the signalized crossing would help with allowing, no, you're not going to increase sight lines, but allowing it to be easier for cars to be able to make that turn, obviously safely, but doing so to not endanger pedestrians who are walking?
You're talking about looking left when coming out of Elmwood. I think there's a little retaining wall there, yeah. I did the site visit for this, so I remember that location. I got suspicious about the sight line, but I checked based on the design standards, and it's a bit uncomfortable, but it's not really restricted based on those standards. But the signal will definitely, it eliminates the need to look for gaps. So yeah, that uncomfortable situation will no longer be applicable.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bayrosh?
I was just wondering, because we're at the end, but because there's more to the process, right? So I was just wondering if you can talk about the timeline. I overheard one of the residents today say that they figured this probably wouldn't happen for another 10 years because that's how slow we move sometimes, which sometimes it is, because we started this in 2018. But I'm just wondering if you can talk about, like, what are the next steps when you actually think that some of these things will actually come into play?
So I can definitely answer that. At this point, the intention behind my recommendation for tonight's report is just to gather the feedback. I ultimately wanted to hear the feedback from you guys, from the community, from council, members from the public, and ultimately the open house was very well attended, and so I'm going to gather feedback from everyone. Our consultant, I took a number of notes, and we're going to get all this feedback. We're going to take a look at our recommendations before bringing another subsequent report back forward, just with all the feedback that's being provided, that has been provided to date, and ultimately will, in terms of timelines, it's going to depend. We're going to have to go back to the drawing board to see ultimately how we want to proceed with this. But I don't have a time at this current stage.
Yeah, because the only reason, because we're heading into budget time, right? So if you're putting a signalized a new signal, right? It used to be $100,000. I don't know what it costs now to put one up. But I'm just thinking that if it needs to be part of the budget so that we can implement it in 2026, will we have kind of some answers before we finish budget?
That's the
You
intent.
don't have to, I was just saying.
It's the intention for us to make a decision sooner than later. We're going to have the conversation on this and figure out, firm up some timelines.
Okay, perfect. Okay, seeing no more questions, I'd like to thank Sarush and Giovanni for this presentation, and again, I'd like to thank you for the open house. I'd also like to thank Megan for the time and effort that she's put into this. We had excellent display boards down there, like she did a fantastic job, so thank you for that as well too. And at this time, I'd like to read the draft recommendation that the report remain on committee, and that I will now poll the council. Councillor Main,
I agree.
Councillor Horfield,
Yes.
Councillor Mallah,
Yes.
Councillor King,
I agree.
Councillor Vrabrosh,
Yes.
Councillor Lowry,
Yes.
Councillor Gardner. Yes. Councillor Bain,
Yes.
Your Worship.
Yes.
Okay, and that's my vote as well too, and that will be the recommendation going forward. This completes the business for infrastructure and operations, and I will turn the meeting back over to you, Your Worship.
Thanks very much, Chair. We will now move into the regular meeting of council for Tuesday, October 28th, 2025. Mrs. High?
Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Main, Councillor Vrabrosh, Councillor Gardner, Councillor Bain, Councillor Lowry, Councillor King, Councillor Mallah, Councillor Inch, Councillor Horsfield, Mayor Chirico, all present.
Thank you. The City of North Bay acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, home to Nipissing and Dokis First Nations, recognized by the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850. We honor Indigenous peoples' contributions, rights, and stewardship, and are committed to learning and building meaningful relationships with all Indigenous communities. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof for this evening's meeting? Seeing none, there are no public presentations for this evening, and Mrs. High.
Moved by Councillor Bain, seconded by Councillor Gardner, that minutes for the public meetings held on Tuesday, August the 12th, 2025, and Tuesday, October the 14th, 2025, be adopted as presented.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Moved by Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Main, that Infrastructure and Operations Committee Report number 2025-02 relating to Premier Road Sanitary Pumping Station Replacement Site Selection be adopted as presented.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Moved by Councillor Horsfield, seconded by Councillor Inch, that council, one, authorize the city clerk to amend City of North Bay bylaw number 2007-228, being a bylaw to adopt the delegation of power and duties policy as set out in Report to Council Corp 2025-106, dated October 15th, 2025, from Karen McIsaac. 2, confirm the appointment of Mairead Knott as Deputy City Clerk as set out in Report to Council Corp 2025-106, dated October 15, 2025. And 3, direct the City Clerk to bring forward the amendment to the delegation bylaw and the Deputy City Clerk appointment bylaw to Council on October 28, 2025 for 3 readings.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Moved by Councillor Millar, seconded by Councillor King, that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application by Goodrich Goulet Planning and Surveying Limited on behalf of Robert Steele, 594 Hardy Street, be received and referred to the Community Services Committee for a public meeting.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Moved by Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Main, that Council receive and file the City of North Bay's water and wastewater year-end financial projection for the period ending September 30th, 2025, as set out in Report to Council Corp 2025-113, dated October 16th, 2025, from Sarah Gage.
Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Your Worship. As we accept this report this evening, I am pleased to update Council that 1, wastewater operations are reporting a year-end surplus of $136,300, and 2, that the water distribution and water plant operations are reporting to be on budget by year-end. At the date of this report, projected reserve balances at year-end are water operating reserve funds at $907,000 and change, and the wastewater operating reserve funds at $1,659,971. These reserves are at the lower end of the range for operating reserves, but are still well within the means to protect the organization. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so it was identified, and I've mentioned this before, that every time we say that we only used so much of this one here, we only used $37,770 of the one-time reserve transfer to balance the year. To me, that's still, we start budget again very shortly. We have to find $37,770 because we used it to pay for ongoing operating of a water system that we know that this is money that we have to pay every year. So again, I caution council of using reserves because the next year we have to figure out how, you're not cutting much out of the water and wastewater budget. I'll talk about Walkerton. So this is something that we have to be very cautious about. In regards to the water operating expense, is sitting at $907,000. The target reserve range for that one there is $1.49 million to $2.23, so we're below that amount. So while some people say we'll just take from another reserve and another reserve, at some point continuing to take from reserves, you have to eventually pay the actual cost of what it costs to run the operation. So again, I caution us going into budget time that while it is good that we came, and I don't think I've ever, I don't know if I've ever seen it where we came like right on target for the water budget, but it is something that is kind of a science where staff are trying to estimate how much water people will use. What will the weather be for the year? Is it going to be hot? Is it going to be cold? So I always give staff a lot of credit in how they calculate those the water budget. But again, it's a cautionary statement that I'll say every time we start using reserves.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Moved by Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Main. The Council approve the award of a contract to 947465 Ontario Limited, operating as Voyago, based on the unit rate specified in their proposal for request for proposal 2025-059 for the provision of a specialized transit services provider for a term of 5 years and 5 months, December 1st, 2025 to April 30th, 2031, with an option in favor of the city to extend the agreement of 2 extension terms of up to 2 years each.
Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Your Worship. The successful proponent for this service has been providing the specialized transit services for 7 years. The service has returned to the pre-COVID level, and the use of the service continues to grow. I'm pleased to be supporting this motion moving forward and look forward to developments as we move forward. Thank you.
Councillor Webrash.
Thank you very much. I sent an email, but it was a busy day for people today, so but maybe the chair knows the answer to this. So I said that because we're staying with Voyago and Paribus, when they first came on with the city, they'd originally talked about modernizing their scheduling system, somewhat in the same manner that we use for transit on demand, so that riders didn't have to book so far in advance and could see when the ride was coming. And I was just wondering if that was part of the RFP or if that's part of the conversations that are ongoing with the Paribus system. But it's okay if you don't have the answer, but if I can just get an answer at some point.
Councillor King.
Thank you, Your Worship, and certainly the comments made about this particular company, I have to agree with it. Over the years, the service has been difficult to operate, but over the last couple or 3 years, I haven't heard anything in the public with respect to it. So it's my assertion that they are certainly doing a good job and certainly support the method, because this is a highly important service that's provided in the community. Thank you.
No further discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Moved by Councillor Horsfield, seconded by Councillor Inch, that council authorize, 1, an agreement for the laying of pipelines on railway land crossings, the railway agreement number XP 602-11698C, between the Canadian Pacific Railway Company and the Corporation of the City of North Bay on such terms and conditions as set out in the said agreement. Number 2, the mayor and city clerk to execute the agreement on behalf of the Corporation of the City of North Bay. Number 3, the one-time fee in the amount of $3,300 plus HST, and the one-time engineering review fee in the amount of $1,375 plus HST payable to the Canadian Pacific Railway Company be paid from capital project number 6908WS Water Main Rehabilitation Program 2025 ongoing, and 4, that an execution bylaw be given 3 readings on October 28, 2025.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Moved by Councillor Horsfield, seconded by Councillor Inch, that council receive and file the August 2025 procurement award update as set out in Report to Council Corp 2025-110, dated October 17, 2025, from Lori Jackson.
Councillor Webrash.
I just wanted to thank staff because I found that the layout was a lot easier to read. The overview was it was easy. I just found it easier for myself, so I wanted to say thank you to the finance staff for taking the feedback that we gave them at the last meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Millat.
Thank you, Chair. As Chair of Community Services, I'm pleased to see the playground equipment at Veronica Park and Feronia Park purchased and moving forward with an expected installation date of spring 2026. And also pleased that the facility booking software, which will streamline the process for user groups and staff, has moved forward finally. I am also pleased to see so much interest in terms of the number of submissions for that software. So very optimistic in terms of its usability. Thanks.
Councillor King.
Thank you, Your Worship, and along the lines of Councillor Vreebosch, this is actually an interesting way to present it, and I found it easy to read. I guess one issue I did find in it, procurement details and request for proposal, 3 submissions were received. Normally, when those submissions come through, they're actually listed with the quote price, and it certainly provides, I think, an understanding of the process that's underway, and I would certainly ask staff if in fact they could show those 3 submissions. And I think that's both the case in the August file and the September file. Thank you.
Any further? Yes, Deputy Mayor Horsfield.
Thank you, and I concur with the points about how we now have more of a structured format for this, and I do hear you, Councillor King, with the procurement details. If in some ways we go and keep adding more detail, we might as well go back to the previous process of having full reports come to council for approval if we're going to add all this detail in. So while the information is available for both council and for the public to be able to see through the procurement and bids software, including it in the report, if we get to that point of wanting to continue to add more information back in, we might as well go back to the old process.
Comments noted. Councillor Gardner.
So I want to respond to that. I agree with Councillor King that when you see the other companies that bid and the prices they bid, it tells you something about whether the winning bid is close, way out there. It just provides a level of detail. Now, going back to the old system, these procurements are automatically approved, so we're not approving them. It's a much different system. So I would encourage staff to follow up on Councillor King's recommendation. So thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Moved by Councillor Horsfield, seconded by Councillor Inch. The council receive and file the September 2025 procurement award update as set out in Report to Council Corp 2025-111 dated October 17th, 2025 from Lori Jackson.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Moved by Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Main, that Report to Council Corp 2025-065 dated October 14th, 2025 from Laura Boissonneau, read 2025 to 2034 Water Financial Plan be received and referred to the Infrastructure and Operations Committee.
And all in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Moved by Councillor Horsfield, seconded by Councillor Inch, that the following bylaws be read a first, second, third time and passed. Bylaw number 2025-86 to amend bylaw number 2007-228, being a bylaw to adopt the delegation of powers and duties policy. Bylaw number 2025-87 to confirm the appointment of the deputy city clerk. Bylaw number 2025-92 to amend traffic bylaw number 2014-38, Section 5, speed limits, Section 10, through highways, and Section 13, traffic control signals. Bylaw number 2025-93 to authorize the execution of an agreement between the Corporation of the City of North Bay and Canadian Pacific Railway Company relating to the rehabilitation of pipelines crossing the railway.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Those are carried.
Moved by Councillor Veybosch, seconded by Councillor Mitchell. Whereas the City of North Bay includes a significant rural population whose unique needs and perspectives are not always reflected in urban-focused policy discussions. And whereas rural residents face distinct challenges related to infrastructure, winter maintenance, land use planning, and economic development. And whereas community organizations such as the Whitfield Ratepayers Association and the Trout Lake Conservation Association, along with residents at large, have expressed interest in contributing to municipal decision-making on rural issues. Therefore, be it resolved that Council recommends that staff investigates the feasibility of establishing a rural advisory committee. And further, that staff report back to Council within 60 days with recommendations regarding the committee's structure, mandate, and membership. And further, that the proposed committee meet quarterly and provide input on matters including, but not limited to, road maintenance and infrastructure, winter operations and service levels, land use planning and zoning, economic development opportunities in rural areas, and environmental and conservation concerns. And further, that membership of the committee include representatives from the Whitfield Ratepayers Association, representatives from the Trout Lake Conservation Association, residents at large who reside in rural areas of North Bay, relevant municipal staff, including representatives from Public Works and Planning Department.
Councillor Veybosch.
Thank you very much. So this comes on the heels of the presentation we received 2 weeks ago. And it got me thinking that, you know, and I do sit on Rural I am the Rural Ontario Municipal Association representative, and when you start thinking about that, you know, things are different in the rural area. And we just heard last night, 80% of North Bay is rural. But whether you have connectivity issues, you know, whether you have access to, you know, maybe they're having issues. We hear a lot about the road maintenance and infrastructure issues that they're having there. But when you also look at 80% of our of North Bay is rural, but yet how much money do we put into rural road rehabilitation, right? So I think it's good for them to have a voice, to be able to express that, you know, some things that they're maybe seeing are a little bit different, and then we need to look at it with a rural lens. I didn't put anything on there, but I do think that, you know, staff can come back with, after consulting with some of those, because I know the Ratepayers Association, I think, spoke to Councillor Mitchell. And they liked, I think what she said was that they liked having involvement with staff. And I think that this just makes it more structured. 4 times a year, they get together to talk about how are things going. Are there areas that we should be focusing on as a city when it comes to budget time, or things that we should be changing? There's specific money in regards from the province of Ontario that is in regards to economic development in rural areas. So we might not be tapping into things that we possibly could if we actually took a look at things with a rural lens. So I just think having something where they meet 4 times a year, giving them that opportunity to have staff at their fingertips, and they can report back to us to say, you know, what's happening.
Councillor Millar.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you to Councillor Raybosch and Councillor Mitchell for putting this forward. I am very supportive of the motion. I think it's a really great idea and a great way to further engage with and consult with folks who are living in the rural communities. I had a question just regarding the 60 days in terms of having staff report back by. I just recognize that the holidays are within that period, so it might be a little bit of turnaround, a quick turnaround, given that it's also budget time. So I just wanted to flag that. I'm not sure if that's business days or just days, but just wanted to flag that maybe we want a little bit longer to provide staff, because we want to also have good policy. So,
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I appreciate the thought behind this. I believe that this was a kind of reaction to Terry Finch's presentation the other day. And, you know, there already is a Woodfield Ratepayers Association that's viable and it's available. And they invited staff the other day, the planning staff, to go over the rural lot creation policy and stuff. And so it clarified all the issues that they had, and I think that was a great way to go. And I got a call from the same Terry Finch the next morning congratulating the staff for attending their meeting, and it seemed to me that it solved all the issues. And when we presented that report in the special meeting, the rural people were extremely satisfied. So that's number one. Number two is the Trout Lake Conservation Authority, or the Conservation Association, were consulted widely throughout the development of the lot creation policy on Trout Lake. And in the end, and then there was multiple meetings, and in the end, the group were satisfied with the proposal. So I think that's a better way to go. You have existing committees, and so why not let those committees do their job, and when they need consulting with the city, they invite the appropriate staff and even some councillors if that would be the case. I think it's a better way to go. So I'm not supporting it, but so thank you.
Councillor King.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to Councillor Gardner's comments. Yeah, I think there's been some good work done. There's no question. This was generated from Mr. Finch's presentation. He certainly opened the ears of council with respect to planning issues, and I think that was all viable. But I still think there's probably a method here for this committee to work. We know right now that the septic rates for pumping, especially in the rural area, is a major question, and that's been discussed for probably, I would say, for the last year or so, and I don't think there's been anything that's really been resolved. I know Matt Parfit has been, back and forth with staff. This might be a vehicle that provides the method to get their point across to where they are and those particular costs that are incurred. So I'm prepared to support the committee. I think it's probably a good direction. Thank you.
Seeing no further, Councillor Vaybrush, final word?
Yep, so are you okay with we amend? 120 days? Just, I'm sure it will come in before 120 days, but I just don't want it to fall off the radar. And then just to the point of saying that this is, a reaction to Terry Finch's, of course it was. It got me thinking about it, right? So, but it made me think with a broader lens about all the other things. And when you start thinking about the pieces where, whether it's the septic rates, whether it's, there's a group of citizens in the Cedar Heights area that have a lot of concerns over some development that's happening. And they're putting their own meeting together because they don't feel heard, right? But when he said that the meeting at the Portage, how it would be nice for more people to know about this stuff, but maybe the meeting is very low key, and they do it at the Portage. We go to them, right? So there's ways that I think that we can be creative, that we're more engaging with the rural area, and that and it's not just the Whittlesville Ratepayers Association, Trout Lake Conservation Association. There are other people that live in rural North Bay. And so they would have a voice. And just because they don't belong on one of these two doesn't mean that they can't be heard, because we are hearing from other rural residents. But yes, absolutely, this came off of the heels. And I think that sometimes when we hear a good idea, we can actually move on it quicker. So yes, it is a reaction, but I think it's a good reaction.
Councillor Gardner, final word.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'd also like to add a amendment, and that the membership also include a member of council. And I need a seconder.
Councillor Horsfield for the amendment. There's a seconder. Would you accept that as a?
I just have a point of clarification that I believe it might be the clerk. The reason why I didn't put a council representative on it was because when there's a council representative, does the clerk have to be in attendance at the meeting?
No.
So I just didn't want to, because I know with that with
No, that's not a requirement.
Okay, because with the
It's only if
Community
there's
Safety
a
Wellbeing
quorum.
Committee.
Only if there's a quorum.
Okay, because the Community Safety and Wellbeing Committee, we don't have quorum, but we have to have the clerk there, so.
Are you okay with the amendment to include
Yes.
a councillor
Yep.
as an appointment? Okay, good. Thank you.
So I'll reread the motion with the amendments. Moved by Councillor Vraybosch, seconded by Councillor Mitchell. Whereas the City of North Bay includes a significant rural population whose unique needs and perspectives are not always reflected in urban-focused policy discussions. And whereas rural residents face distinct challenges related to infrastructure, winter maintenance, land use planning, and economic development, and whereas community organizations such as the Whittlesville Ratepayers Association and the Trout Lake Conservation Association, along with residents at large, have expressed interest in contributing to municipal decision-making on rural issues. Therefore, be it resolved that Council recommends that staff investigate the feasibility of establishing a rural advisory committee, and further that staff report back to Council within 120 days with recommendations regarding the committee's structure, mandate, and membership, and further that the proposed committee meet quarterly and provide input on matters including but not limited to road maintenance and infrastructure, winter operations and service levels, land use planning and zoning, economic development opportunities in rural areas, environmental and conservation concerns, and further that membership of the committee include representatives from the Whittlesville Ratepayers Association, representatives from the Trout Lake Conservation Association, residents at large who reside in rural areas of North Bay, relevant municipal staff, including representatives from Public Works and Planning Department, as well as a member of council.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Gardner, seconded by Councillor Bain, that the following bylaw be read a first, second, third time and passed. Bylaw number 2025-91, to confirm proceedings of the regular meeting of council held on October 28th, 2025.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Moved by Councillor Bain, seconded by Councillor Gardner, that this regular meeting of council do now adjourn at 7:49 PM.
All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Good night.